his backyard, starting with ba 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 da 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 ba 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 da 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 ba 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 da da da, and he's not afraid.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Superhero Rewind Commentary Podcast. It is an project. It's me, Captain Logan. And hey, Austin, do you know what evil lurks within the hearts of men?
I don't know, my brain just exploded 5 seconds ago. I didn't know there was a part before that part in the theme song.
Yeah, I had it rigged just a couple seconds too early.
I was like, whoa, did he put on the wrong... Oh my god.
Yeah, sneak peek into the rest of the song. You know, all these 14 years, you could have just gone back and actually listened to the song. I've credited it every video.
But I can't. That song is just that specific point.
It's Backyard Super Kid by Justin Roberts. Now, have you ever watched any of the 2 or 3 videos where I've used a lengthier section of it?
Yes, because the first time that I heard past the "and he's not afraid of Jet."
Well, let's see if you know the first time I did it.
Oh, I don't know if I can name drop a video. It's been so long.
I actually know that. Sorry, when you said first, I thought you were going to tell me when it was.
Oh, no.
I actually remember it. It was the first collection video I ever did. It was the first DVD. I don't even think I had Blu-rays yet, but it was the first DVD collection video I did.
Here's my superhero 8-track collection.
So, once again, I'm Captain Logan. Tonight we're going to do The Shadow, and joining me is my one of my agents, Austin the Day Ghost. And to make sure that he is actually who he says he is and one of my agents, I have to make sure that he knows the correct thing to say after I say, "The sun is shining."
But the ice sure done is slippery out here.
You lose, sir! You get nothing!
No, it's colloquial.
Oh, you're in southern Canada.
Yeah, I'm in southern Canada.
Folks, we hope that you'll consider watching the movie along with us. It's always more fun to do that, but you can also always listen to this as a podcast without the movie, and we'll do our level best to provide context as we watch the film, talk about it, discuss the story and the film at large with you. This is one I've never done a commentary on, so I'm excited about it. This was, oh goodness, I actually don't have listed out here who requested this. Let me try to pull that up real quick, because...
So uncivilized.
Yeah, I'm really unprofessional today. This is not a thing requested on Patreon, but I let some folks on a 24-hour stream earlier in the year pick some movies for this. And well, originally they were supposed to be re-reviews when I was doing the Unscripted show, and of course now it's turned into commentaries. But anyway, Oh, it was Matt Bat who asked for it. Thanks, Matt Bat. Appreciate you, man. And then the other movies that were requested for this series were Ultimate Avengers, which I actually was going to do a couple weeks ago, and it didn't work out, but we'll try to do that soon. And also Mystery Men. So those are the other 2 requested Superhero Rewind commentaries that you can look forward to in the not-too-distant future. And, sorry, my browser is suddenly frozen up on me here.
Real eclectic picks, though. It's interesting.
Oh, I thought you were being facetious or something.
No, like, they're just not a lot of big go-to things.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because folks could have said, well, like I said, they were supposed to be things that I have reviewed in the past, so there are all kinds of big heavy hitter things that people could have gone to.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm just surprised, like, it's a lot of... like more obscure things.
Oh, Matthew Bass is Matt Bad. He just blew my mind with that. I didn't. I had no idea.
Also blew my mind. I didn't know that.
This is the first time Austin has seen this film.
Not literally right now while we're watching it, but yeah.
Right. He did prepare for this, but he had not seen it before this week. And we haven't talked about it too much, so we went, I don't know, we talked a little bit over text today, but I didn't actually flat out get your opinion on it, so I'm not even sure.
It's true, yeah, I didn't think about it, but we mainly just talked like more objectively, like, it's kind of similar to this, like, oh, you know, these are things that happen.
We made observations.
Yeah.
But I did not get any judgment from you, so I'm curious to see how you come down on it. That'll be exciting, yeah. So again, get a timestamp 0. I say timestamp 0. What are you looking at on the front of your rental, Austin? Because I am watching the collector's edition Blu-ray, which I just got my hands on this week because I had a DVD that had this in full screen, and I was like, screw that, I gotta go get my hands on the Blu-ray. So anyway, I'm watching this on disc, and it opens with a Universal logo. Do you have anything in front of it, or is it...
I think it was just Universal. Yeah, it is.
And I think it's a double Universal logo. Would you kind of scrub through a second and just make sure that it's the same?
Yeah. I'm also glad you asked me that, because it was super loud when I hit play.
Ba-dun-dun-dun! Dun-dun-dun! Universal had one of the more kind of theatrical and bombastic of the opening themes. I like that one.
Oh yeah, I mean Universal's just got a great logo, because you know what it has.
Space.
Flying letters of silver and gold.
Okay, yeah, that's great. Nobody here's gonna know what you're talking about with that. I thought you were gonna go to a Tim Curry plays.
Oh no.
Because he's in this movie. So I really thought you were going to say, it has spies.
No, I only have one Universal logo. It goes straight into the opening credits from there.
Okay, now let me double check and see if mine is actually double or if that was just the... Because not to get in the weeds with this, but I had to rent this first and watch it, and then I got the Blu-ray. Yes, it only has one. It had two on the rental for some reason.
Weird.
And I watched it with Jason, and he was like, come on, we know it's Universal. We just saw your logo the first time.
How many planets can there be? Come on.
Jareth Gearhart, does it look good on Blu-ray cap? Yeah, it's the same transfer. It looked like to me identical to what I saw when I rented it on YouTube.
That makes
so
sense.
It looked clean. It was fine. It didn't blow my mind or anything. Like, it didn't look, different enough from what I'd seen in the past to be like, oh wow, but it looks good. Yeah. It's just fine. I will speak real quick before we get into the movie to the collector's edition. The only thing that is collector's about it is that it says collector's on it. It has a new, from when this was released. When did this come out? And I think this is, see, oh, it's a Shout Factory disc, too.
I was going to say, is it because it's Shout Factory?
It is, yeah, that's kind of surprising to me.
Says that.
Yeah, I hate it when these things come out and they give you the date that the movie came out, but not the date that the actual disc released, because it says 1994 on it. I'm like, I know when this came out! So anyway, I don't know when this released, but it had a featurette new to this that was just a few snippets of interviews with cast and crew, and it only has like the director, the writer, the actress who plays Margot, and Alec Baldwin. And it's like 23 minutes long, and that's the only thing that is here. And there are very few insights in that collector's edition. Like, it seems like the kind of thing that would come out to publicize the movie, even though it's
like a fluff piece.
Yeah, even though it's like a couple of decades later that they're talking about it. So
they're trying to sell the Blu-ray.
Yeah, well, I mean, it barely made its money back the first time around.
Yeah, exactly. So they're like, we need to make something to get people to buy this now.
They still have to sell it. Jareth Gearhart says, it got a Blu-ray release. That makes it a collector's edition. No, that's exactly right. Yeah, and I think this is the Blu-ray release for this. There's another one that released in PAL region that looks a little different, but that's the only other thing I've seen. So this is $20 on Amazon right now if you want to get this or update your collection, because like I said, all I had was the DVD, and that wasn't going to fly this time. Okay, is everybody ready to get into this?
Yep.
All right, here we go. We're at timestamp 0. Let's watch The Shadow. Here we go. Everybody, please press play. Sorry, hold on. I've got to get to my clock. We're going to have the timer on the screen there if you need to sync up with us. And as always, thanks for watching live. Thanks for watching after the fact. We appreciate it. If you want to chat with us through the movie, we will look at the comments as much as humanly possible. We will prioritize super chats as always. And here we go. Everybody, please press play right now. Ba-na-na-na-na-na.
Flying letters of silver and gold fly past a planet in space.
Hey, this company is neither bankrupt nor have they been bought out.
Oh, that's pretty different from what we've been doing lately.
It really is. We've been dealing with a lot of that kind of thing. Okay, so right out the gate, I just gotta ask you because I'm so curious. In general, did you enjoy this?
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Okay, cool. That's all I want to know. Thanks for being here, buddy. We appreciate it.
Bye, everybody.
That's why I called him my agent with his glowing red ring.
Yeah.
Kind of an odd choice to open this movie with whistling.
Yeah. I hadn't really thought of that, but immediately I was like, okay, this music sounds like something.
Well, it's not really whistling, but that's what it sounds like. And it permeates throughout the movie, and I kept looking for a real motif with it, and I didn't exactly find one. Like, at first I thought Goldsmith, and I like his score for this a lot, by the way, and I think it's a good, if not kind of standard, 90s superhero theme, but the main fanfare or whatever you want to call it.
I think there's some of, like, Marvel, like, I feel like this is, like, the template for what Marvel would end up doing with their soundtracks.
Oh,
too.
that's
like,
interesting.
I feel like I'm hearing bits of that.
What it reminds me of is, well, and it is very Goldsmith, certainly. It sounds like there aren't any there aren't any motifs or anything that sound. That guy's name is Jellybean. There aren't any motifs or anything that sound directly out of another one of his movies, but you can hear some of the more broader hallmarks of his movies in this, certainly. But it does remind me of other, like, pulp hero based movies from around this time. Like, the Phantom soundtrack isn't that far away from this, if memory serves, although I haven't watched that in a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I missed out on all this pulp stuff.
There's a whole series of them through the 90s, and most of them fail.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's
really
weird that we have as many of them as we do. Yeah, Zorro is kind of... That was the one I wasn't thinking of earlier when I was putting together kind of a mental list in my head of these. That would be kind of the end of them, right? So you start with Dick Tracy, which was pretty popular, and I think it made like 3 times its budget. It was kind of surprising it didn't get a sequel, because it performed relatively well, and it was immediately after 89. That comes out in...
I just assumed it bombed because it didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, no, it didn't. It did all right, and then, like, sequels have been made for, with less of a turn of a turnaround.
Mm-hmm.
Real quick, I get that the Shadow here, or he's not the Shadow yet, but that Cranston as what is it, Yin Ko, is a terrible warlord man, but like he's got the resources to shave. Like, why does he have a 5 o'clock shadow?
No, but he's evil.
Oh, that makes him look more evil. Okay, and he's also got the Mandarin fingers. He's got the.
Well, and it's awesome because he's talking to James Hong, who is the best live-action Mandarin in Big Trouble in Little China, and the one henchman that's standing behind him right before this is also in that movie.
Daniverse says, I'm glad you brought that up too, because this old man who just got killed is like the token old Asian man in every movie ever.
Yeah,
he's
James
even
Hong,
in Balls of Fury, that guy.
Yeah, he's in Kung Fu Panda.
Oh, that's true, yeah, and he's in Mulan.
Mm-hmm.
Even his voice is everywhere.
Yeah, no, my brothers always called him that guy that shows up in everything, but you can't remember his name.
Yeah, I never.
Except now I'm older and I know his name.
And sometimes you don't even remember what you've seen him in, but you just know he's been in everything.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's got such a distinct voice.
It's actually kind of shocking he wasn't in Mortal Kombat.
Oh yeah, true.
And there is some Mortal Kombat in this movie,
and,
by the way.
His character that I called the Mandarin is basically the inspiration for Shang Tsung, too.
Oh, interesting. Did you have that with this? There's a little Mortal Kombat in this movie.
There's a little bit of everything in this movie, yeah.
So I want to know if that is Alec Baldwin's actual chest hair, and that's not a thought I usually have with things, but it looks gnarly. Like they
Yeah.
had to have pasted some of it on.
I think it's fake, yeah. It reminded me of like Austin Powers.
It just looks kind of patchworked on. We'll get to the origin story stuff here in a minute, because I'm curious to know how you feel about the big, changes and additions that they've made to the Shadow's origin here. But I want to go back through the kind of pulp heroes in the 90s. So you start with Dick Tracy, and then you get the Rocketeer, which is not an actual original pulp hero. That's
an homage to
That's
it.
later, but it's an homage movie, and I think of it as certainly in this vein. It also didn't perform. Part of why I'm doing this is because I want us to have a conversation about why we think this didn't perform, along with some of these others, right? Then you get the Shadow. Then in a couple of years, I think 96 or so, is it? You get the Phantom. And then you're right, in the next one would be Zorro, which did perform, and did get apparently a really crappy sequel. I've never seen that.
I guess by that point it was too late, and we weren't moving forward with all this pulp stuff.
Hey, look, it's the ancient one. It's also weird how much his origin has in common with Doctor Strange.
Yeah, I was thinking
Surely
that
you
too.
had that.
Oh, yeah, no, of course I had that.
Like,
well, it's interesting because
he's
it's very
basically Doctor Strange if he wasn't proactive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
Well, it's Doctor Strange, but this movie's also very weird in that it's both 89 and Begins.
Yep. All
so
at
I'm
the
like
same time.
flip-flopping through Begins and Doctor Strange with this origin stuff.
Yeah, well, the big difference, of course, is that neither 89 or Begins has any kind of mystical stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's where you get some Doctor Strange in there.
I do have some questions about the mystical stuff. I'm having a hard time not wanting to run it about 19 different directions here as we're looking at this. And then I was just going to say, so those are kind of the big five, right? And then you also get Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow in the late 90s, which...
I haven't even heard of that one.
Yeah, which is more of a pulp sci-fi thing, but Sky Captain is very superhero-esque. Like, if... certain of the early like 1930s, 1940s serial space heroes count as superheroes, Sky Captain would have to. I've considered doing that on this series.
It's then almost surprising that it took 10 years after all of this to do John Carter.
Yeah, right?
I think that movie was in development hell, so I don't know if it goes that far. But...
the effects here with this knife is the main thing that reminds me of Mortal Kombat.
There is some dated CGI in this, which I just kind of look past, like it's the era it came out in.
It's charming, and what's impressive about it, here's the thing, it actually kind of leaps at me more than it might in something like The Mummy, because those movies kind of leaned too much on CG, and there's a lot of practical in this, and it shows. Like, I think this is not an expensive movie. I think every dollar is on the screen. And the only time there's CG is the stuff they absolutely just could not do on set. Like, there's no way to make that knife work unless you hand drew it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's exactly what I was thinking too when I was watching it earlier today. So you just kind of accept that, like, yeah, it doesn't look real, but, whatever. It's fine.
I love the way this movie is setting its tone and showing you right away just how tongue-in-cheek it's going to be. And it has that in common with The Phantom, which I feel like has always been kind of a misunderstood movie. And this used to have that. I think it's been reappraised a little bit in more recent years, particularly on YouTube, because even just looking at thumbnails from anybody making a review of this movie in the last 5 or 10 years on YouTube, everybody seems really positive on it. It seems like a lot of people just shocked that they had a good time going back to this movie or watching it finally for the first time. And it's the pulp throwback thing. It's the serial throwback thing. It's not trying to be very realistic. It's not taking itself too seriously. The plot is pretty surface. There is a character arc, although I don't think it, even in this context, I don't think it goes maybe as far as it should or it wants to. We'll talk about that as we get further, into it with the kind of redemptive arc that you get with this. But I feel like that this is a surprisingly not too compromised movie, considering how much clear studio mandate and intervention is involved with this movie. I feel like it's right up front. You can tell that they're starting from a place of your movie needs to look mainstream enough. It needs to look enough like 89 and the stuff that's really big and popular right now. It has to be an origin story. I would be shocked if that didn't come from the studio. When you listen to the director and the writer talk about it in the 23-minute behind-the-scene featurette that I was able to watch, that's all I could get my hands on with this movie. I love this shot. The composition with that guy's head in the deep left, that's really cool.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you can see the panel, right?
Yeah, and there's a lot of that with this. It's got that in common with the best comic book movies of the period, like Blade and things, where there's a lot of you kind of imagine that the storyboard was a comic book, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So right from the beginning, I had like I feel like Alec Baldwin's maybe miscast in this movie. I don't know. And then he immediately won me over in this scene, and I was right with him through the whole movie.
Oh, that's great to hear. Yeah. I was wondering how you'd feel about that, because, it's a really weird way to introduce him with the kind of Xena thing of he's this evil despot warlord man, and then now we see him as the Shadow. And I kind of get what they're doing. Like, the contrast is cool. Mm-hmm. But it does have to have some of the audience scratching their head a little bit, going, I don't know about this casting.
Yeah, and he's got like a very distinct voice, and I was like, I don't know if this fits. And then once we get here and we see him doing the Shadow thing, I was like, okay, no, like this does work.
How do you feel about the voice modulation that we do in post, like the effects that we put on voices?
That kind of like reverberating thing that it's doing when he talks?
Yeah, that we do with him, and that we do with Khan, and like any character that's hypnotizing people.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it's a cool way of making them sound distinct and, for lack of a better word, that kind of like intimidating voice without them doing like a silly Batman voice type thing that we do a lot now.
Yeah. And like it's already
cool.
silly in its way, and it completely embraces it. So I don't think I find myself ever laughing at this movie.
Yeah.
Like occasionally there's like a misplaced line or something that I'm not a big fan of, but I never find myself going, either, okay, you guys just took this way too far, and your characters are no longer playing it straight within the kind of goofy fiction. Or am I, laughing at something that they don't mean for me to laugh at, except for maybe CG in like one or two places.
Yeah, absolutely.
Daniver says this image is iconic to me. Yeah, it would be for me too if I'd grown up with this material. Like in retrospect, sure. Like I should feel that way about it. This is a movie that I did not grow up with, despite the fact that I was there when it came out. I was one of the kids that this was aimed at. I was in that prime age group for this that didn't go. And I'll use that to segue into the big question, Austin, which is, why didn't this perform better than it did?
I'm not sure. I don't know, to be honest. Yeah, I was thinking about it all day, and I don't, because I think this was also like ripped apart by critics, wasn't it?
Yeah, Ebert liked it okay, but most critics, he gave it a 3, which is what I would have given it. I think that's what I gave it on Rewind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure. I feel like it's just, I have a disconnect in what people were thinking with it back then. I don't know, because personally, like, I think this, to me, in a way, is 89, but kind of better, which I know you won't agree with. But that was my reaction to it today.
Story-wise, I absolutely agree with that. It's all a matter of nostalgia and stuff. But first of all, this story makes sense. I know what's happening. I get what the themes are. They're thin. They're intended to be thin. They're pulp thin. pulp was made with thin paper. That was the reference there. And
I thought you were talking about orange juice.
And also it's stylistic like Begin, or like 89. And
Yeah.
I look at this movie and I go, it's this really weird, like, chicken and the egg thing, right? Or dog chasing its tail, I think is a better analogy, where the Shadow begets Batman. Like, Bill Finger talks a lot about how the first Batman story was his riff on a famous Shadow story. I forget which one, because I don't know
It's
the
like
Shadow.
straight plagiarized, yeah. Like I think even down to art.
Oh, is that right?
Like it's pretty close, yeah.
And obviously, a lot of the trappings and tropes with Batman come from the Shadow. We'll, I'm sure, bring some of them up as we go along. I did a breakdown of that in the old Rewind, where I thought I was being profound in comparing Batman and the Shadow, and I didn't realize just how much Batman owed to the Shadow. It was the early days. Leave me alone. I didn't know what I was doing yet. I still don't. And then, can I just say, this guy playing the scientist, the new agent, he's wonderful.
Oh yeah, and this cabbie guy reminds me of the cabbie from Escape from New York. Again, there's a lot of just things from other movies.
Yeah, well, and I think he's partly cast because he was in Taxi Driver, so it was like a nod to that. Like, oh, let's have him drive the taxi because he's in Taxi Driver.
Yeah.
So that's kind of fun. The Cobalt Club is from the Shadow Pulps. And probably the radio show, too. Again, I don't know that material real well. I just did a little bit of reading to get a sense of how much of this was new and how much is actually based on real Shadow stuff. And it's shockingly faithful considering the ways in which it's not faithful. You know what I mean? I think the best comparison with this movie as an adaptation is Constantine.
Oh, okay.
Because it's taking a lot of the same popular, familiar characters. It's using some of the major antagonist characters. In this case, the one big one. Khan, I think, is considered the Shadow's arch nemesis if he has one. He comes up in multiple stories, and his first story is a try to rule the world plot. I think one of the things people complained about with this movie when it came out was that it wasn't enough of a detective story, and that it was just a bad guy like in a standard comic book movie or superhero movie that wants to rule the world, but that is what Shirwan Khan was. Mm-hmm. So I can see the argument on both sides of that. Like, you're doing a neo-noir sort of thing, but exactly like Batman 89, it's a mystery and it's not. Like there's a mystery to unfold, kind of, but you know who the bad guy is from the very beginning. And it's at least not like 89 where you don't know very much more than your protagonist does. So that's good, because like that Jack Napier is the Joker through the whole movie, and then you watch Batman find that out, and Khan reveals himself to Lamont Cranston immediately. It's weird, right? The ways this just follows a standard superhero formula, and that it also subverts expectations and puts things on their head. Like, the way the love interest is handled is very different from what we usually did in this day with a love interest, where she finds out the secret identity very quickly, a thing that we make a huge deal out of over a decade later with Kick-Ass. Wow, can you believe we did that? And other things had already been doing it, like Ghost Rider did it, but this movie, very early in superhero things, modern superhero things, does that, and she doesn't get kidnapped at the end. Shocking!
Yeah, and it looks like it could have gone there, but it happens a little bit earlier, and it's not exactly a kidnapping thing.
You have to love what we do with the Shadow work in The Shadow.
Oh, 100%, yeah. This scene is also, when it came up, I was like, oh, now they're in the Club Obi-Wan from Temple of Doom.
Yeah, I had the same thing. And I'm not even a big fan of that franchise, but I even picked up on that. And that's got to be on purpose, right? Because, of course we're going to a little bit of Indiana Jones with this movie. The Phantom did the same thing, because
that's very pulpy.
They're all pulling from movie serials. And importantly, The Shadow had one. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, I did. Well, the Shadow was huge back in the day because he was on radio, he was in comics, he was in pulp novels,
Mm-hmm.
serials, just everywhere.
Yeah, apparently in the radio show, he seemed to maybe have. It's ambiguous about it, but he seemed to maybe have supernatural powers. But that's not the case in the pulps and in comics.
Oh, okay. So there's some of that radio influence to this movie then.
Yeah, a lot, and it's taking a lot of characters from the pulps that aren't radio things,
Mhm.
but the kind of, I want to say the lore of it is more radio. Like in the pulps, it's a little bit convoluted about, and kind of fun, really interesting, about the identity of the Shadow, because there's a guy who is the Shadow who has a backstory, something to do with being like a crashed airplane pilot or something. Again, I've never read the old Shadow pulps, but he recruits a man named Lamont Cranston and takes Lamont Cranston's place in a number of, like very often, in order to conceal his identity. But Lamont Cranston himself is not the Shadow. And then
Oh, okay.
in the radio show, they simplified it because they thought that was going to be too much for listeners to keep track of. And Lamont Cranston becomes the Shadow and is the Shadow. So the movie is simplifying it in the same way, because it's only got, less than 2 hours to tell its story, and it goes, that's probably too complicated, especially if you want to do an origin story, because it's a superhero movie and it has to be an origin, even though 89 wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting because it sounds like this movie is what we like about a lot of good comic book movies, which is that it's taking from everything and condensing it into its own idea.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing that reminds me of Constantine is just the fact that we're driving around in a taxi. But like I said, it reminded me of that because a lot of the trappings are the same, and it's using a lot of the same characters. But the flavor is more mainstream. It's trying to find a way to make this more accessible for general audiences. And I don't think it goes so far with that it alienates everybody, as sometimes happens when you try too hard to be accessible. I think this actually still ends up being a thing that is not for everybody, in a fine way that just unfortunately didn't make it any money. But it's also like that in that the characterization of its protagonist is quite a bit different.
Oh, really?
Well, just by virtue of giving Lamont Cranston this kind of backstory, kind of makes it seem like you either don't get what the Shadow is about or the point of him, or again, you're trying to make it accessible, so you take the risk of changing that and making it a little bit of a different thing. Like if the Shadow is a road to redemption story, then it's difficult to play around with the moral ambiguity that he usually has. Like, the Shadow is all about having a network of people that he kind of controls, and he's not... He doesn't always seem like the most... And I'm getting this primarily from the Batman Shadow crossover comics. That's the main stuff with the Shadow that I've read. But I've talked to Vince about this, and he tells me that they got that right, because that was the thing that most interested me about the Shadow when I read those. I was like, oh, I didn't realize how not especially like altruistic or feeling the Shadow is. Like he's pretty morally ambiguous, and obviously this guy is more than morally ambiguous, but the fact that he seems to be trying to atone for something really changes the flavor of what that character is all about. It makes it difficult to appreciate as much his arrogance. The Shadow acts like a wraith, that like a human wraith that pretends to be kind of like the Phantom does, that pretends to be above people, pretends like he's a ghost, sort of like the Phantom, and he is, and he's kind of superior to everybody. And when it's a redemption story, it doesn't watch that way as much. Like, he's like Batman in that he's using his get up and his skills to intimidate criminals. And so he's acting superior in that way, and he's still acting superior to his agents just because that's baked into the DNA, I guess, of the lore of the piece. But when you get in his head and he's internalizing and he feels bad about horrible things he's done in the past, and that's the main reason he's doing this, he feels like a different character to me.
Yeah. Well, I guess it makes sense. Like, if he was a crime lord, that he would feel the need to get help from people, and because he had an empire that he ran.
And because it's the 1930s and he doesn't have the internet or phones or.
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't have MySpace yet.
Right. He's got to wait a few years for MySpace. In this scene, we have a couple of actors that I recognize making bit appearances. The older man who runs the museum had a sitcom, and I want to say it was Alf. Is he the guy from Alf, or is he from something else?
I don't know. I've never seen Alf.
He is a father in a sitcom. And then the man that we're looking at here, who's about to get killed by Sherwin Khan, spoiler alert, the incompetent security officer. Well, he's not really incompetent. He doesn't do anything wrong. He just gets killed. That's unfortunate for him.
That's just him incompetent. Yeah.
This is a younger Ethan Phillips, who in a couple of years will play Neelix on Star Trek Voyager, and he did a number of these kind of walk-on roles in 90s movies. If memory serves, unless I'm mixing him up with somebody else, I think he's also in Ride with the Devil, the Civil War movie that was Tobey Maguire's breakout role.
Oh, okay. It's just one of those character actors that popped up everywhere.
Yeah, and then he became a main on a TV series with Voyager, which I don't think ever happened again for him. But he was just interesting little Captain Logan trivia, I guess. He was one of the first of two actors that I met at a convention. Now, the first convention I went to, I got his autograph.
Oh, okay, cool.
Along with Robert Picardo.
Did you go up to him and say, "Hey, I saw the shadow. I like the way you died, boy"?
No, because I didn't realize he was in this at that point. I wish I had. So I remembered Sherwin Khan's entrance differently, and was kind of surprised coming back to this. I had it in my head that he and Lamont Cranston were both like centuries old.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not what happens.
Is it maybe because of the one flashback dream sequence thing where he's like fighting people with a sword?
No, I think it's because he shows up in a sarcophagus. And well, I think it's because that opening scene easily could have been in any time period. First of all, like, you can't really tell when you are, because you're looking at ancient ornamental stuff. I don't know why, but this bit with Ethan Phillips with a gun to his head is one of the images that is burned into my head with this movie. I remember most from making that original rewind all those years ago. Somebody confirm this is the man from Alf. But yeah, and then he shows up in a sarcophagus, and I was like, oh, okay, so he must have been... I don't want to talk about this too long because it's not actually what happens. But he must have been like mummified, and then something about being in that makes him a normal person. And then I got really confused when he started knowing things about New York and asked where Lamont Cranston got his tie.
Plus, the director made Highlander, which goes back and forth between present day and the past.
Yeah, he's had a really interesting career because that is Russell McKay, who directed both Highlander and the dreaded Highlander 2,
The Quickening.
The Quickening. And he's done a number of movies that have been either bombs or barely successful, and yet he still, to this day, keeps getting work. And I guess he's just a reliable workman director. And
Yeah, he had a movie out this year, the Teen Wolf, the movie based on the show, based on the movie.
yeah, I wonder if he maybe directed episodes for that.
I wouldn't be surprised. I only looked at his film part of his filmography, so possibly.
Maybe so. I didn't look at that. He does have TV. Yes, he did 40 episodes and he was executive producer. That is exactly why he's making that movie. Yep.
That's awesome.
There you go. But yeah, he made Resident Evil Extinction.
That's the only one I've seen.
He hasn't made much in the last decade.
Mm-hmm.
But he has continued to work, or he hasn't made much movie-wise anyway, I should say. He's done a lot of TV.
Yeah.
So obviously, I want to give him credit for this movie that I think is wonderfully stylized and that has a pretty decent script for the kind of thing it is, and a movie I like. But a lot of the things I like about it, the more I've looked into this movie, I can't help but think I have more to owe to the director of photography.
Oh, okay. I mean, he's definitely a mixed director from what I've seen.
When you listen to Stephen Burham, who's the cinematographer for this movie, a lot of the ideas visually that jumped out at me that I was really impressed with are the things that he's talking about. And even when the director talks about those things, he credits them to the cinematographer, to his credit. So when you get things like all this really cool shadow work, the shadows of the beakers on the back wall in the scientist lab and Ian McKellen's lab, that all looks really great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it adds so much depth to the world.
Here in a minute, we're going to get a shot of Ian McKellen that feels right out of Batman Returns to me, with his glasses and the way that the shadow is bouncing off his face. We do a thing like that with Michelle Pfeiffer in
where they give her the cat eyes before she's Catwoman.
Robert Wild put in a $5 super chat. He says the toys for this movies were great. Yes, they were. My brother had a couple figures in the car. Vince has a whole section in one of his glass cabinets in his museum room that is mostly Ghostbusters, but is some other things devoted to this movie. He has that car, and he has some of the figures from this. He says, I even dressed up as the Shadow for Halloween one year. I was a cool kid.
That would be both a cool costume that not everyone would get, and it would be really easy to do. That would be a really good Halloween choice.
Who is it that did that on the channel? Was it Connor? Somebody did the Shadow at some point.
I don't know. I know Connor did Invisible Man.
Had a big hat. We had somebody that was a big Shadow fan that showed up in a Shadow suit once in a video, and I can't remember who it was.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
They went with a very toyetic look for this movie, naturally. Getting back to... Oh, I'm sorry, I have to ask a question about the scene.
Yeah.
What is... I realize that he's hypnotized, but whenever you hypnotize somebody with this power, we'll get into the telepathic powers and how they seem to work at some point. It seems like it's kind of like the Force, where you say a thing to someone and it gets in their head, and then they do whatever you ask, and they think it's their idea. What is it about saying you need gas makes you drive your car into the gas station and explode it?
Well, he was also just an idiot and went, well, there's gas there, so I guess I'll go to it.
Like, I just thought it was kind of weird the way that's conceived. Like, why doesn't Khan say, drive your car to that gas station? And that guy goes, that's a great idea.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean,
there's no other place in the movie where that happens.
Yeah, it's one of those things they only did because it was cool, and it was cool, but yeah, it doesn't make that much sense.
Yeah. No, it's great pyrotechnics. It's a fun shot. There's one angle with that it looks a little TV. Reminded me like it was from the Flash TV show or something.
Mm-hmm. Well, and just him saying you need gas is a cooler line than drive into that.
No, I agree with that, and so maybe it's worth it just for the moment. I mean, it's the kind of thing that you'd be less likely to question in a comic book, probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
It's just a cool moment. There's something
Oh, you
about
could have, because it was straight in front of him. You could have just had him say drive, which also would have been cool.
yeah. There is something about things being in real life in a movie where I have a harder time suspending my disbelief sometimes, even
Mhm.
in a more cartoony context. You know.
Well, it's just because you're seeing real people versus a comic book. You're seeing basically cartoon characters.
So I love all the low tech stuff
Mhm.
with how the shadows, apparatus works. And there's a couple of things that start to get more futuristic for the 30s, like the fact that the Shadow has a video phone. But it's really cool that he's got these pneumatic tubes all the way through the city, and just how exactly his network works. He's got a cool looking Batcave. I like the old timey computers. Like you don't question any of this stuff; it just looks right.
Mhm.
How much
Well,
of
and
this
this is
do
my
you?
favorite type of technology to visualize.
Yeah. How much of this do you feel like was an attempt at trying to make what a shadow movie, what a big budget shadow movie would have looked like back then, or is it more a '90s movie that is a period piece?
Um, I feel like there's both, because I feel like even if it's not exactly what we would have made back then, it definitely feels like they're trying to be more of that era.
I agree with that. Jason got halfway through this and said, "This doesn't feel '90s to me. It feels more timeless." And I both agree and disagree with that.
Hmm.
Probably just because I
Yeah,
was there and I see the seams of the '90s in it, but
yeah,
but I do think that it's got a consistent tone.
yeah. No, I can see both the mid to late '80s and early '90s in this, but I also, but it's that period's take on the '40s
Yeah. Which again is exactly
or
what the Phantom
'30s.
was.
Yeah.
In fact, I think the Phantom even gets a little bit closer to that pulp style than this does.
Oh, okay.
I somebody earlier in the comments mentioned the Kenny G music in the club. There's a couple things like that that are kind of weird that date it, where it's like, well, that's not the music they would have been playing back then. Like nothing sounded like that back then.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know, maybe it's just because it's not as in your face, but like it wasn't as dated to me as like the Prince stuff and Batman. I don't know. Maybe on a rewatch I'll have it more, but on a first viewing, it wasn't jumping out to me as much.
Well, and it's minimal. There's not so much of that, which I
Hmm.
have a hard time. I don't know. I get cynical about this, and I have a hard time not thinking that that those kinds of things are studio interference, and the director is working really hard to get as much around that stuff as possible. So he uses the bare minimum of what he's forced to. Where they're like, "Oh, you got to have something in the movie that sounds like this," or Kenny G really wants his music in your movie, or something like. I don't know if any of that is true, but it's a weird choice. Especially because you opened that scene with period music,
Hmm.
or it's something that sounded period enough to me, I guess. It's really funny too that song is all about not understanding a mystery, and this is a really easy, straightforward mystery that nobody's going to be remotely confused about, and like it's barely a detective story at all.
Well, it is hard. Being a detective is hard work. You got to shoot people and like fight people.
You got to carry around guns that you rarely need because you have the ability to cloud men's minds.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. You got to find buildings.
So I like the girl that plays Margot fine. I think that she and Alec Baldwin have okay chemistry. I think that uh, that Baldwin and the actor playing Khan have
Mhm.
better chemistry. I think they are spectacular in scenes together.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they play off each other really well.
They're just so much fun. He's
Yeah.
got. I'm looking up his name because I don't know it. He's got
I
so
looked
much.
him up earlier, but I can't remember his name
He's got
now.
so much charisma. John
Mhm.
Lone. He's hamming it up in just the right way. he's got those big wide Gowron eyes, and I love how they don't get super wide right away. Like, he saves that for particular, like, pivotal moments. It's awesome. I also appreciate that if you're gonna do the villain who asks the hero to join him trope, it doesn't read obligatory here. He's got real good reasons to do that. In fact, he's not even going to the hero because he's the hero and because he's got to take him out in order to take over the city. He's going to him because he actually admires him and he really does think that he's going to team up with him. It's not that obligatory Green Goblin Spider-Man thing, which is amusing because it's the same writer.
Yeah, and I think their chemistry just helps it too. Alec Baldwin, I also think, is maybe the best Bruce Wayne on film. I don't know. It's him or Bale.
Does it make you think? Does it make you wish he had played Batman, or do you not care because you got this?
I don't care because I got this, but I never would have thought that. Like, I never would have thought that he would be good in this kind of a role. But no, like, he nails it really well. You really wouldn't think that. And of course, I always knew that this was Alec Baldwin, but that wasn't an actor that I saw, a great deal when I was a kid, like, until a little bit later, so I didn't have really any opinion about it. And then just, like, retroactively, more recently, I've been like, yeah, it is kind of weird that was Alec Baldwin, and then it worked. But it does, and he works great in both roles. One thing I wanted to ask you was, as the Shadow as well, is how do you feel about the prosthetic thing? Like, when he turns into the Shadow, he has to kind of morph, and he has, like, a weird shadow face. Like, he's not just, he doesn't just put a bandana in front of his face. He also has, like a weird mask thing. So, I think it's really cool in that when you see him, he just looks like, like a comic or pulp cover. You're like, oh, that's just the Shadow. Like, I don't see the actor in any way. Yeah. It's just the Shadow. When you get a little close, it reminds me of, like, Darkman when he's wearing the fake face. So it's maybe not as good in close up, but I think it's a really cool idea. I like that it is a full mask that he's wearing. I like the transition that we do in the car with it. We didn't talk about that while we were watching it. I guess you'll see it again, but when he has that transition and then the driver has a reaction. That's cool. Kind of creeps him out. So obviously, like, he's so classy. He pays for his bourbon, and then I like that turns into a plot point. Like, it's a surprisingly tight script overall. I do think that the whole thing is predicated on a couple of plot conveniences, of course. Yeah. I mean, which is very much the genre at this point in time. It sure is. There's both some 89 and some Batman Forever in this movie, retroactively. Yeah. This is very much those 4 Batman films and Begins, as well as, like, 8 million other movies. I would just be remiss, if I didn't say that is one of the coolest shots in this movie. Yeah. Oh, it's so cool. When he's standing over the squares, and then you don't even realize you're looking at a person. And this is one of my favorite lines of the whole movie. This is how you do fan service right, I think, where we poke at it a second, and then we move on, and it actually makes sense in the context of the scene. When his wife, and she only gets one line, I think, in the whole movie, and it's a good one, when she says, I think they just made up the Shadow so people would listen to the radio more. That's great. Yeah. That's how you do that. That's so classy. Yeah. Well, you know why it works. Is that it's just the beginning of a scene and then a scene happens. It's not like, say, Apocalypse, where it cuts to them walking out of the movie theaters and they're like, third movies always suck, and then it just cuts to the next scene. Like, there is a scene there. Yeah, where there wasn't even any reason for that to be there. Or other things where we just go on forever about it. Yeah. Yeah, that's true, too. And also, we're not making fun of how stupid it is. It's not like the Dr. Octopus name thing in No Way Home, right? Like, yeah, it's reverence for the material, and also it's just case by case. You always have to call it like you see it in the moment, but, like, sometimes we get too tongue-in-cheek in a thing that otherwise isn't. This already has its tongue so firmly in its cheek that it works.
And that's why I said at the beginning, it's cool the way that it establishes its tone with the hive of scum and villainy, New York City. Like, as soon as you see that, you know exactly what movie you're watching.
Yeah, exactly. And that also is just a comic panel. Like, it wouldn't scroll, obviously. You'd have just the whole letter. But the fact that it's like regular writing and then it ends with the logo saying the shadow, that is a comic panel.
I even like the kind of cutesy prequel, like, history thing of the atomic bomb. Hey, that's catchy. Even that works for me in this movie.
Yeah, for sure.
And again, it's because the setup is right. It's because the timing is good. When he says, it's like an implosion, explosion, submolecular device. And then... you see, saying it right now. I just love the way he delivers that. And then he goes, like, an atomic bomb. Hey, that's catchy. It's great.
Well, I love when he does, like, the atomic...
Actually, not like that. It's great.
I like when he says device, he's like, device.
He is one of the unsung heroes of this movie. Like, everything he says is great. You know what I feel like he's channeling? I just had this thought. He's the scientist that makes the oxygen destroyer device in the original Godzilla movie.
Oh, sure.
That's what he's doing.
Yeah. He just needs an eye patch.
And we're dealing with nuclear bombs again. I don't know if they intentionally looked back at that, but if that actor wasn't thinking about that, I'd be surprised. I bet that actor was thinking that.
Yeah, I hadn't had that thought, but you're right that he is very similar to that.
Yeah. And it's a cool way to deal with a bomb. It does kind of degenerate into that really standard third act action movie thing where we're trying to defuse a bomb. It's counting down. We have an arbitrary number set for no good reason. I kid you not, when he goes, set it for 2 hours, Jason just looks at me and goes, why? And I said, I don't know. It could have been anything. This camera angle cracks me up. Or sorry, this shot through the city, because it's just the transitions in the Birds of Prey TV show.
And I was going to say, this reminds me of Daredevil.
That too, but if you ever watch that show... It's complete with the fades in between moves to different buildings. It's exactly Birds of Prey.
Yeah.
Robert Wild, how do you guys think this compares to The Rocketeer? Thomas Lowe says, I actually prefer Rocketeer to this, and Robert responds with, The Rocketeer is generally more well-regarded. It is. I think it's technically the better movie. I think it has a better third act, and I think it handles I think the history stuff in that is so clever that it bumps it up a little bit.
Yeah, I still have to see The Rocketeer. The second Disney Plus came out, I was like, haha, I can finally see The Rocketeer, and then I never did.
You should. I think you'll love that movie.
Yeah.
Especially because you like First Avenger. That's the same director with a lot of the same sensibilities. But I think you like First Avenger.
Yeah.
But
that's pretty good.
I don't have the reservations with the origin in that movie that I do with this. I think is the thing that kind of bumps this a little lower for me than The Rocketeer.
It's just tighter.
Yeah, and it's the place where I'm conflicted about how the adaptation is done, how the character is handled.
Yeah, and I'm lucky from a certain point of view in that I don't really know anything about the Shadow.
Yeah.
I definitely want to after watching this. I'd like to read some of that stuff.
Well, and there's lots of different iterations and different ways to do it, sort of like Batman in that way. So, like, I'm not saying it's straight up wrong to give him a kind of evil backstory like that. I just don't know that it fits as well as something else might, or just keeping it ambiguous when you get to how faithful it is handling his network of agents and all of that. That's the big thing that makes me feel kind of funky about it. I also don't really love like, I think there's almost too many explanations for things with this movie. There is some mysticism. We don't know how the knife works. We have a knife that has in a kind of a personality. It's got a face, and you can sort of control it if you handle it right, and it floats in the air all by itself. That's one of the only things in the movie that's actually straight up mystical. Because by the end of the movie, we have an explanation for the telepathy. There are people who are born that use a part of the brain that the rest of us don't use. It's science.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the way tumors are often handled with telepathy and telekinesis.
Mm-hmm. So would you say it's almost similar to how you feel about the Lone Ranger?
Yeah.
2013 movie?
It's actually a lot like that, where I think they're overthinking it a little bit to give it an origin.
Mm-hmm.
Although
I just had that thought by what you were saying.
the Lone
so
Ranger is
that makes a
worse
lot of-
because the Lone Ranger had a very simple origin already, and this, in some versions, doesn't have an origin at all, and it's supposed to be ambiguous, and in other versions has a simpler origin than this.
Oh, okay.
But the thing that starts to make it feel too convenient is the fact that Margot has telepathy. And I guess I like that only in it kind of gave the writer an excuse to make her a stronger character and not make her just a damsel in distress and actually give her things to do. But it does feel like a choice just to give her things to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, what are the odds that you meet one of the only other people with this power that you have at the same time that Khan shows up?
Mm-hmm.
That's what's too convenient about it to me. And also, why now for Khan? There's no explanation as why he chose this moment to show up and try to start taking over.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But these were questions we weren't supposed to ask in a lot of 90s superhero movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It's just, this is the story. It's happening now.
And that's fine. Usually, you get one, though. When you have two things like that, it's, well, I say you get one. I still want to know why the bad guy decides to do what he's doing now. That is a 60s Batman shot. You can't argue with that.
With the soldiers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the Dutch
Well,
angle?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Also, this is a super, super minor thing, and I might even be wrong about it. You're in the mid-30s. I guess in New York, maybe you'd have more of it, but pizza's around, but it's not, like, super popular yet.
I don't know. I don't know the history of pizza.
I'll tell you, my grandfather, who was from central Arkansas, didn't have pizza until he was, like, in his 40s.
Mm-hmm. Crazy.
So I'm just saying it wasn't super popular yet.
Yeah.
Thomas Lowe just did the obligatory thing I knew somebody would do, which is he yelled "Khan" in the comments.
Yeah, it's really weird he would quote Spock in that new movie.
I appreciate that they avoided the temptation in this movie to have someone yell "Khan."
Mm-hmm.
Although, if nobody working on this was a Star Trek fan, they wouldn't have even thought of it. But we're only a decade after Wrath of Khan, so it would be surprising if nobody in your movie thinks of Khan when your main villain is Khan. Especially because he's not that. That's the one-liner I really could have done without. When he says, "Next time you get to be on top."
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, it's just kind of weirdly sexual for no reason, but also, like, if you think about it for 3 seconds, it's such a weird thing to say. Because you're like, next time, he's dead. But also, what? So next time you'll flip over and you'll be the one that dies? Like, it's just a weird thing to say.
Yeah, but sex is cool.
Also, I want to know where all these Mongolian soldiers came from. They're like the thugs in 89. Like, where do they come from?
Well, I think you just answered your own question, Cap.
Oh.
They came from Mongolia.
Khan ships himself in a sarcophagus. But he's got a whole army that's already in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he shipped himself there because he claims he wanted to, quote, soak up the... Well, I guess I'm paraphrasing. He wanted to soak up the power of Genghis Khan. which of course is just superstition and nonsense because his powers all come from a thing in his brain, but he doesn't know that.
Yeah.
But he already knows he has that power, so I guess he just figures that Genghis Khan will give him some other powers.
When he also describes himself as the last descendant of Genghis Khan, and 0.5% of the entire population of the planet is a descendant of Genghis Khan.
I had not thought of that until you said it. That's hilarious. I'm just not seeing these guys getting on a commercial airplane. Like, they have to check their swords?
They're probably wearing, like, graphic tees and jeans. They probably weren't wearing these. Maybe some band shirts.
He's on the Reliant. He's wearing one black glove and giving a stirring speech.
There's the obligatory.
That's a classic shot. 90s fall, right? Slower frame rate. We're just lucky that he doesn't.
The 80s, yeah.
We're just. That's true too. Yeah. Because that's like, go back to Die Hard.
Yeah, Die Hard does that. Tons of movies do that.
We're just lucky that he doesn't dissolve at the end of the fall.
They should have.
Yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself, but I was actually really surprised that when Tim Curry throws himself out a window, it's not outside. Did you have that? Like, I fully expected him to hit a street, but he's actually inside and goes into another room. I was really surprised by that.
There was a lot of people just falling in this movie.
Yeah, that's true. And, like, jumping, and for lots of different reasons, too. Some people are thrown, some people accidentally fall, some people are hypnotized to fall.
When the shadow is introduced, saving a guy who's about to be thrown off a bridge.
That's true, too.
It's the main method of killing people in this universe.
I actually wanted to ask you about that with that scene. Is that a thing that bugs you in movies when someone is about to do something horrible and then they're distracted and then they don't do that horrible thing? Like, should he have just dropped the guy into the water then? Or would you not drop the guy because what if it's the police?
It depends what it is. In that specific instance, I don't think there's an issue because they're about to kill a guy and then all of a sudden there's like, it could have been the cop or something showing up.
It'd be a really funny thing for a cop to do.
Even if it's
show
not
up and
like
start laughing.
Yeah, but they're just like a crazy person. Like, you want to deal with that, and otherwise you'll be throwing this guy off and get stabbed in the back or something.
So the weirdest thing about this, and I know that he's hypnotized, is that her father is watching that whole thing.
Yeah, he's into it.
He's there doing this really, obviously sexual thing.
Yeah,
and he's making the
cool
dad watch. What a jerk face.
And it's a power move.
Yeah, he's like a North Korean level dictator.
It's the worst thing Kim Jong-un's ever done.
No, that's not true, but he probably would. Am I right or am I right?
Am I right?
I hesitated. I was like, I don't know if I should go there. Again, the shadow word.
What's the deal with dictators?
But I did have that thought. I mean, obviously I was paralleling lots of different dictators when I was watching him, and it is kind of interesting that...
Including Genghis Khan.
Yeah, and including Khan Noonien Singh, who, I'm sure that's part of why they called him Khan, right?
He's probably a descendant of Genghis Khan.
He probably is! Even though he's Middle Eastern. Khan rules in Star Trek like 2/3 of the planet during the eugenics wars, so he gets a little farther than Genghis Khan does. You got that great line that Sherwin Khan has where he goes, Genghis Khan ruled half the world. I'm here to finish the job. Jason looks over at me and he goes, oh, so he's going to rule the other half.
Well, and the other question is...
Not even the whole world, just the half that Genghis Khan didn't rule.
Yeah, exactly. The real question is, are they related to Shere Khan as well as Genghis Khan?
But yeah, I just brought up Khan again to say it's kind of interesting that, I mean, Star Trek Khan, that you actually can make some parallels between those characters beyond just they have the same name, because they're both rulers that took over a lot of the world. Although Khan does it somewhat more benevolently.
Mm-hmm.
And
he
does
got
it.
that Stan Lee Mandarin thing where Stan Lee Mandarin is constantly going, "Ha ha, Iron Man! I'm a descendant of Genghis Khan. I was born to rule." And I'm like, that doesn't mean anything, Mandarin.
Yeah, because this Khan thinks that he is destined to rule because of his bloodline, and Star Trek Khan thinks that he's destined to rule because he is genetically superior.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of the sci-fi versus the more historical way to do that. And I guess here there's like a pseudo-mystical component until you realize that it's a thing in his head, where it's like, I also should rule because I have this power, and maybe he thinks he has that power because of his bloodline, like I'm actually physically a god. He never gets into that.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say that is even in a heightened and kind of cartoonish world like this, it's a little bit frustrating that we don't get a little bit further into motivation and psychology with the hero and the villain in this, because the villain really is just, I mean, he's fun to watch, don't get me wrong, but he doesn't really have like an interesting opposing worldview or anything. Like he's Ra's al Ghul in Batman Begins, if that was a Saturday morning cartoon, like in exactly the same way as Lamont Cranston used to be bad because he's always fought with the evil in his heart. Okay. Like, what was his background before that? Like, why does he do that and nobody else does? It's interesting that, and you probably had this thought because you said that this is like the midpoint between 89 and Begins. Begins has a Bruce Wayne who almost goes to the dark side and becomes a killer. And this is like that the Bruce Wayne that goes to Ra's al Ghul in that movie if he agrees to go ahead and kill the criminal, and then later is doing this for a redemptive reason, as opposed to just guilt over killing his parents and in fear and all of that. And I kind of like that. It's an interesting take on the sort of Batman idea, that, could you have a Shadow or a Batman that starts from he should be irredeemable, and he has killed a lot of people, but now he's come around on it. Where I resisted a little bit is I don't know where all that hatred and anger came from, and his and his bloodlust and his thirst for power. I don't know where any of that came from. And the only reason he seems to get over it is because he apparently never sat right with him, and he has a conscience. Okay. Like, it's so surface, right? Like, what is really the difference between him and Khan? He has a conscience and Khan doesn't have a conscience. That's it. That's all you get. Read a book.
I mean, Batman Begins, Batman is like, I'm not gonna kill anyone, and then goes around killing everyone. So there wasn't a ton of thought in it there either.
Well, I don't agree with that. We don't have to fight about this, but that's one of those things where the way it's shot, it looks like he's killing a lot of people, but the story is supposed to be he doesn't do that.
Until the end, where it is, but
that notwithstanding, because I'm with you on that whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's nice that there's at least some sort of parallel to them in that Khan is the kind of warlord that the Shadow was before he became the Shadow.
Yeah.
It's nice that there is at least something, because that wasn't a guarantee at this point in comic book movie history.
No.
Or at least Superhero, because this isn't exactly a comic book movie.
And what you would expect would be for everything to be fun and work, but you'd have a really generic villain. And the thing I'm most impressed about with this movie is that the villain is not generic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
This is one of the best exchanges. Your mind is an open book to me. Learn how to read. That feels right out of a pulp to me. That's classic.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Okay,
and the
so
bullets hitting each other is great.
So I don't understand how they're that good at shots. Like, their power is telepathy? Is it because they can read where the bullets are gonna go? Like, are they just good at shooting guns?
Yeah, it was just because it's cool, Cap.
Oh, okay, all right.
It's because it's so much fun, Jan.
I'll give them that. Okay. It's hard not to have two hats when I look at a thing like this, you know? Because, like, I'm in conflict with that sometimes, where there's the side that is really enjoying this as just an escapist, romp, and it's a really great spectacle.
Yeah. Oh, I've always just found the bullet hitting another bullet thing cool. So, like, that's just like a thing I like.
Yeah, and I just feel like I can say it's cool, and I don't have a problem with the fact that they did it. And also question, wait, but why though?
Well, because they're both awesome.
Okay, fair enough. Did you call the invisible building?
No, I didn't. And my immediate first thought was, okay, so someone's gonna fly into this building, right? Because you can't see it.
I think it's so impressive that they get away with that, because I hadn't seen this in a lot of years, and watching it yesterday, I also didn't remember that. I didn't call it. And when it turns out to be an invisible building, I was like, wait, you're telling me they have a whole scene where these two men stand there, stare at nothing, Lamont Cranston is noodling it, trying to figure it out. They give you a shot, a wide shot, that would fit the building, and we are not calling what that's going to be. I mean, look, we're still staring at it. It's giving you everything. We should know what that is.
Maybe it'll be a giant hole in New York, like Daredevil.
I just think that's some pretty cool ballsy filmmaking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Because I'm just saying that might not pay off.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, maybe you wouldn't think, oh, Khan's gonna have the ability to make everyone forget this building is there, but just visually, retroactively, it feels like they're setting up an invisible building. There's a Goosebumps episode that does that. In the earlier scene with Margot, where they're having almost two different conversations, and he's saying, look in my eyes, you won't like what you're gonna see. Were you expecting that to be the place where she sees in his mind, like, is gonna happen later? Because I did.
No, I didn't. That's interesting. No, I didn't expect that to happen. I also didn't expect for her to figure out that he's the Shadow, especially this early.
Yeah, and I like the realistic way that happens, or the believable way that happens, where she walks in and it's like, well, I was mind controlled to go find the Shadow, and I'm here. You must be the Shadow.
That's weird that I went here when I was supposed to kill the Shadow anyways.
Yeah, see, I like that she's not an idiot.
Yeah. Oh, this scene is also horrifying, but it starts out as not horrifying and becomes that. Because when he starts playing around with his face, I was like, that's really funny. And I was just imagining, like, silly things that will happen when he rips it off. And when he rips it off and it's Khan, I was like, never mind.
Yeah. Again, everything's pretty surface, but within that context, it's a good symbol. It's a good image.
It's also just very dreamlike. Like, it captures that feeling.
Well, and I was going to say, we also keep messing with, or going back to that symbol, with mirrors. So when you get to the end and he keeps looking in mirrors and he's seeing both himself and Khan, and he's got to pick between the two, it's very clear what we're doing. That the question is, does he still have too much of the warlord in him? Can he control that? Where I get off saying it doesn't go quite far enough is I don't ever really feel like he's tempted to go back to that, and I don't know if I want him to be or not. But it's like, what exactly is the arc by the end? Is it just that like he's afraid that someday he'll go back there again, or he doesn't like that he has that much darkness in him, but he just has to, like, is it a character that refuses to change, that like the shadow is that side of him tempered, and ultimately he simply has to keep tempering it? Because Margot's gonna have this really nice speech to him. It's tender. I like it a lot, where she says, like, all of that is in the past, and you can move forward now, and you don't have to be that. But then after that, what does he do with it, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's just he lobotomized that part of himself. Is kind of the arc.
Well, but he doesn't lobotomize it. He uses it. He turns it into the shadow, and he doesn't change the way he's using the shadow.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he doesn't do anything different by the end.
Mm-hmm. I just mean like he kills that warlord aspect of himself, which there's elements of it in the shadow, but it's not like that same like evil side.
Yeah, that's true. But I'm just saying he's been doing that all along. So I guess it's just self-conscious
like,
thing.
I'll
It's
never
just
go back to it. Yeah, like
it's just an uncertainty thing.
I fully removed that side of me.
Is it supposed to be the Batman thing of like, I'm afraid that if I use a gun I'll kill people?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. We also talked over what I think is the funniest exchange in this movie.
Yeah, we did. It's
the dream thing. And it took me so far back because when she's describing her dream, I was just like, yeah, this is a thing that a woman says to sleep with you and not something that actually happened.
Yeah.
Her dream might as well have been, I was hanging out in my high school cheerleader uniform. And, anyways, what was your dream?
Well, and
then he describes his, and it's really funny.
Yeah, you really don't expect him to say that. It's wonderful how surprising it is. And again, I feel like this movie is willing to take kind of some comic risks. There's a lot of comic acting and not comic scenes that I think is why some of these exchanges are so effective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Because that's not really a comedic scene, but just the delivery of, you got issues. Yeah, I know. It is really funny.
The scene after that is as strong.
Oh, where she's changing?
Just the way she convinces him to let her come with him is confusing. I'm not totally sure what I'm supposed to get from it. Is it just that she looks really seductive in the dress, and so he says, okay, sure, come with me? Or is it just, I'm tired of you talking about this, fine, come with me? Whatever. I don't know which it is.
A little bit of both.
Okay. What do we know this guy from? It's been driving me insane.
I don't know, but I love that the first time anybody is like, "Hey, you look stupid in your costume," you get this like horrific scene following it.
This is one of my.
It's also scarier that he's like calling for help too. At the same
I know.
Time.
Yeah, that's sad. This is one of my favorite scene transitions in anything.
I'm not sure because it also is really funny in the scene before it isn't. So like, there is a part of me that went. Like, I stopped being
unnerving?
Not, like, scared of it. Yeah, like, it's not unnerving and it immediately becomes really funny. So like, I don't know if that plays.
Yeah, it does to me because you're switching POVs. But I can see how you might complain that it's undercutting.
The main thing is the fact you hear like the bang when he drops. I think is like the main thing that makes it funny.
There are some over-the-top sound effect choices in this movie. I can't remember where it is. There's a bit where somebody clanks a glass and it's like boing.
Boing.
I was like, what? We're about to get like a classic death trap from a movie serial or like a 60s Batman episode.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love how it starts as like a Batman intimidation scene, or I'm sure the Shadow probably did that before Batman, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And it immediately turns from that to a death trap.
Yeah, where it turns around on him. And I also like the
Yeah.
way he gets his comeuppance on Tim Curry later in the movie, where Tim Curry can no longer find his actual feet, so he keeps shooting in his shadow like an idiot.
Yeah. Also, that's, I think, the best Tim Curry line delivery in this movie, where he goes, "My mind controlled."
Well, and then when you get to the end of the movie and he starts just freaking out and foaming at the mouth, you go, well, that's why he was cast for this role. Like, Ian McKellen is fine. I feel like he's almost wasted in that role. He could almost be anybody.
And this is so early in his career. Like, I'm trying to think of what he's done before this.
Well, he did a lot of stage before that.
Yeah, but I just
I
mean
do
in film.
believe. Well, that's what I'm saying though. Is that's why he's this old but still hasn't done a lot of movies yet. Is I think a lot of his career was stage.
Well, I just mean, like, I think that's why he's wasted in that way. Is
Somebody
that
correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, and
he's not really come out yet.
It's crazy to think that the stuff that he's most well known for,
Yeah.
is 10 years after this when he's in his 70s.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because we're still pre-X-Men and Lord of the Rings.
I do kind of feel like the holes in the side that he's able to breathe out of, kind of lessen the danger of the death trap. Because all he has to do is keep breathing out of those holes before, like, while he's waiting for Margot to get there. And Margot gets there, like, ridiculously fast. What is she, like, her office is just up the street? Like she drives up, she gets there so fast. It's like, well, what's going to happen if she waits half an hour? Yeah, he's just going to breathe out of those holes. Like, there's not really a ticking time bomb, because the water's going to get all the way to the top, and then it's going to stay there. It doesn't have anywhere else to go. It's not going to keep, right?
Yeah, I mean, what I liked about it was
or does it get, would it get past the holes? Is that the problem? No, because it does go all the way to the top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, what I liked about it was there was an explanation for why he can be in here for as long as he is.
No,
and you're right, like, it does deflate the
like
actual
that too.
danger of it. But I thought that was at least cool and different for an underwater scene. He's not just sitting here holding his breath for 20 minutes like we normally do in movies.
You know what it feels like? It feels like the explanation for a cliffhanger in a serial. So it'd be, oh, the water's filling up. What's going to happen? Find out next time. Come back to the theater. And then when you get there, for the second part, he notices those holes that you didn't notice before.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
I can see that.
The reason it doesn't play as well for me is because it's all one scene. And that's the issue with The Phantom, is that movie is an 8 or 12 episode serial all condensed into a 2-hour movie, and some of it doesn't play for people because it's a different format.
Yeah, like, it's not what those were.
Yeah, and it can't be. And so once I realized that they were trying to make a serial with that, I totally appreciated that, and like more so than Indiana Jones was doing.
Okay, interesting.
But
yeah, I'm excited to see that when I get there.
This has a little bit of that too. So I want to talk a little bit about the telepathy and how all that works. Like I said, it seems like you have really just one superpower in this movie, and then a sense that there's a lot of mysticism in the world. The first question I have is the Tulku telepathic? Or is he working entirely on some kind of mysticism, like he's the Ancient One in Doctor Strange? That's Firestarter. That's just right out of Firestarter. Also,
well, now we're in Highlander.
They did most of that fire practically. Can you believe that?
I mean, I think you can kind of tell just visually.
Well, I know, but just, you'd be really hot.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
But now she's going to describe about how hot she was to Alec Baldwin.
She's already done that. She's like, I was lying naked on the beach. in my dream. I'm so
Now she'll
hot.
be like, I was lying naked next to fire, and he'll be like, I killed some people.
I feel like you have to commend his restraint when she is in that earlier scene when she's lying there in her nightgown, clearly wanting some action, like you said.
When she's like feeling herself up, yeah.
Yeah, and like I feel like he would not be remotely out of bounds to say, "Oh, okay, are you interested in just like jump into the sack right now?" And she'd probably say yes. Like
I hope he wouldn't say exactly
like that. Yeah, but he's got some restraint in that scene. It's kind of surprising.
He's the Shadow. He has no time for women. He's got to shoot some guys.
Every time someone tries to explain something to him, I want him to say, "I know. The Shadow knows. Stop talking to me. I know." But anyway, so first question I have about the superpowers, the mythos there is the Tulku telepathic? And does he know that the Shadow is already? Because it seems like, or that Cranston is. Because Cranston is going to use his natural telepathic abilities. Like he's going to learn from the Tulku how to shape them and really control them. He's like a Professor X or something. And use them to cloud men's minds and to, make people think that he's moving around like a wraith and all of that. But, like, what if he wasn't telepathic? Could the Tulku still have been able to teach him what he taught him? That's a question.
Yeah, I assume that he knows all of that. Especially because he's, like, well-trained at this stuff. He can probably sense when people are, I would imagine.
Well, and he also goes after both him and Khan, which suggests that he knew that they were both telepathic.
Maybe only people who are descendants of Genghis Khan are telepathic.
But are you with me that it has to be more than just... I mean, it's pretty clear the Shadow only has that one power, but there must be mysticism in this world. Because everything is explained by the part of the brain we don't use, as we get at the end in the asylum, except for the flippy sword. It's the only thing that's not explained.
Well, is it also just that they're changing the image of it in the same way that the Shadow can change his face?
No, because there's a whole different. I don't understand where that butler was going. That butler walks up the stairs, meets a person, turns around and starts walking the other way. I don't understand that.
Well, he's Hitman. He got caught. He was like, "Oh, I'm not supposed to be in this spot."
Awesome.
She knows.
But no, the knife will attack you unless you behave with it a certain way. And it's not really explained what it is that you have to do, but it says like, but we learned from Khan you can't use like brute force or whatever. So it's not like either of them is controlling the other person's mind to see the knife a certain way. Like the knife does what the knife does. It literally is, as far as I can tell, floating up into the air and it's not these guys using telekinesis to do it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I would probably say it's mystical, and that piece of the brain is what helps you tap into mysticism.
Yeah.
I guess. And that's why it's not an entirely magical world.
Unless
it
it
becomes
is
your, like, force-sensitive thing, right?
Yeah, unless it is, and that's just the only thing that we see so far, and then in sequels we would have seen more magic open up.
Yeah, we would have gotten Clayface in the sequel.
Because I could have seen this being a whole, like, Tomb Raider sort of world, where you just have straight-up mysticism.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that.
I weirdly had a couple flashes to that movie, even. Like, everything, like the original Tomb Raider, like, I was reminded by everything in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's got that, like, Indiana Jones-y thing, where it's not, like, outwardly magical, but there is mysticism. It's like people are casting spells.
I would have been so curious to see what a sequel would have done building on this world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would have been interesting.
I also think, and this never would have happened, but I also think that this actually itself, this is just a Batman shot. Just a Batman shot. I would have actually seen this as a better sequel to a different movie. Like, it would have been neat if you could have had the movie where you have a very ambiguous backstory, you have no idea where the Shadow comes from, and he's more in the background, and you follow some other character while he keeps showing up, and you make him a mystery, and then in the sequel you do all of this and you develop his backstory.
Yeah, no, that's true too. I mean, I am glad that the Shadow is a character in this movie. Especially compared to the original 4 Batmans.
No, that's true too.
Also, because I forgot to mention it earlier.
But you could have done the 89 thing, but still just like actually focused on him and being in his head a little bit. Like, he still could have had, it still didn't have to be an origin movie necessarily.
Yeah, no, that is true. But now we're in the Dark Knight Rises section where I forgot to mention that with Ian McKellen. He's the only me scientist. He's got his nuke.
Yeah, I had that too. And it's like both Batman Forever and Dark Knight Rises, where you've got the giant circular bomb. But Batman Forever is more like this because we actually see it roll down a street.
Mm-hmm. The Shadow's not flying it into buildings and stuff.
It's also interesting that the other independent superhero movie that came out this year, The Mask, there's
also some Mask in this too.
Has a bomb at the end that is ticking down that is going to explode.
Well, that was something I was going to mention earlier too, which is when the Shadow first meets the love interest. It reminded me of the Mask.
Yeah.
When they're in the club.
Yeah, the Coco Bongo. And it's it looks like a really similar club from the same kind of period, even though the Mask is set present day, but sort of present. It's like 89, where it's just timeless. It's a world that you can't really peg, even though it has like 30s cartoons.
Mm-hmm. And then here it's just Club Obi-Wan from Temple of Doom.
This was the old DVD menu, and so all I can think of is the menu. Where he's going up the stairs. They make you watch that whole thing before they give you the options.
Oh, don't you love that with movies? I have that with the final swing in Spider-Man 1.
Yeah. Me too. Where they play you the last minute and a half of the movie, where he's just swinging through the city.
Yeah. I always hit play, and I'm like, what?
Okay, I'd like to throw out 2 minor criticisms.
Yes.
That are specific to scenes that we have recently looked at. One of them is, as soon as, this is just amusing to me, as soon as the building is revealed, at least some of the people who finally look at it, their reactions shouldn't be what the taxi driver's is, which is, hey, where'd that building come from? It should be, oh yeah, that's right, I remember now, there was a building there.
No, people in New York don't notice anything, Cap.
But what we're told is that everybody remembers it up to a point, and then they're fuzzy about when it was demolished, because it was never demolished. So when they get their memories back, they should be like, "Oh yeah, it's been there the whole time." That's what they should have said. The other thing is, we're told that Tim Curry's character is the only American. I think it's really funny that we have 2 British actors that one is actually trying to fake an American accent and the other one doesn't even try. Tim Curry, supposed to be American. Occasionally, it sounds like he's sort of trying to be American. Most of the time, he just sounds like Tim Curry. Ian McKellen is actually trying to do an American accent.
I can't even say Tim Curry sounds British in any movie. Tim Curry just sounds like Tim Curry.
Oh, I don't agree. I mean, he's from Britain. He sounds like he's from Britain. He does have a very distinct voice, certainly, but he has a British accent.
He's got a voice all his own. He's got a Tim Curry accent.
This is the reason he is cast in this movie.
Yeah.
Because who else do you want to watch spin around like that with a gun and make this face?
You can just hear the Pennywise voice now.
Fight! But anyway, so this is the other minor criticism I wanted to throw at this, which is we're told that he is the only person who is going along with Khan and pledging allegiance willingly. At the point where he starts being a problem and asking questions and telling Khan he really doesn't want to go do the thing that Khan is asking him to do, that's when Khan should start mind controlling him, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't ultimately affect anything, because it's not like he was going to kill the Shadow anyway.
Yeah.
Even he knows that. He's like, really? Me? Like, well, all you guys, go try something.
That scene also just makes me wish that Tim Curry was Joker in '89.
Yeah, and I don't have that, but I get why people wanted that. I've never had that fixation with like him as that character.
Well, it's not specifically just Tim Curry. My main thing is I just don't really like Jack Nicholson as the Joker.
Yeah, and again, I don't agree with that. Like he's great.
He's Jack Nicholson.
I'll never, yeah, which is fine.
Yeah,
and you needed it to sell that movie, but I also think he's great in it. And yeah, like it would have been really interesting if Curry had gotten to continue voicing.
I think it's because
Joker
we're getting like
series,
specific
but
shots that look like '89 when he's holding him up. So
Yeah.
I'm seeing that in my head where I'm like, oh, what would that look like? You know what that knife is also like is the that weird update thing that the Mortal Kombat movie does with Scorpion's blade, where it's a snake that's sentient.
That's true. Danaverse says, I'm glad he brought this up because I forgot about so yeah, there's a set that burned down when they were shooting this. And he says,
really?
He says the climax was supposed to be a lot more epic, but the set burned down, so they had to go with something different. I didn't realize it changed the climax, but I did know that they lost like a week of filming over it.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Yeah, it doesn't have that like Masters of the Universe thing where you watch the climax and you're like, they ran out of money.
It doesn't feel like they ran out of money. It does feel like something got weirdly compromised at the very end. Not with this stuff, but this is the other question I wanted to ask about the powers. What is... And this is partly why I'm not sure how I feel about the main character's arc by the end.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that gets him to a place where he can finally just straight up do telekinesis, which he's never done the rest of the film?
Mm-hmm.
He takes out the villain by breaking a ton of glass and then telepathically taking a piece and throwing it into his head. And I feel like it's trying to say something about redemption, blah blah blah. It like gets him to a place where he can like use telekinesis, and it starts with taming the dagger.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's that mystical like voodoo. Like he worked out how to control the blade. Now he can fully utilize that ability.
Yeah, I mean maybe it isn't supposed to have anything to do with what he learns, but then it does seem kind of out of nowhere. You see what I mean? That's the part of the movie I don't think adds up.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know. It's weird.
Well, were you not kind of confused at the end when he starts breaking down the glass? Were you not thinking, like, what is actually happening?
No, because when he throws the mirror into him, I was like, oh, it's just the ending of Big Trouble in Little China. It's like the exact same shot. So I was more distracted by that. I wasn't even thinking about the telekinesis.
Yeah, and again, I've never seen that. But, I'm kind of lashing onto the powers. And then here's another question. So, well, I guess this isn't a question so much as it's interesting that he hasn't really used his guns much. And then he finally pulls them out, almost like the movie just remembered that he had them. Because I get that he's probably thinking I can't affect Khan's mind, so I'm going to go ahead and get my guns out. But then he starts using telekinesis later. So is it just... What even makes him realize he can do that? Is it just like the rage of the moment? Is he tapping into his darkness right then when we have the symbolism of he's seeing the bad guy in the mirror and he's worried that he is that? You see what I'm saying? Like, I don't know what even the impetus for the telekinesis is in that scene.
Yeah. Yeah, I just assume it just ties into how he controlled the dagger, and then he gets into that moment and there's all the broken glass, so he starts using it.
But he breaks the glass with his mind.
Yeah.
How?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
He didn't go in there intending to use telekinesis. He's got his guns out.
Well, doesn't he get knocked over or something before that? And does he drop his guns?
Maybe he does. Yeah. Shadow Mojo... sorry, not Shadow Mojo. Shadow Knows Joe is the commenter. It says, it was an earthquake that ruined the mirrors and shattered like two out of three of them. Like 2/3 of them.
Oh, wow. That's awful.
I
Just
love
that,
how
like,
hokey
random act
is.
of God stuff you can't predict.
Just the ball rolling down the hallways is so funny to me.
Well, I like here that you get the Raiders of the Lost Ark boulder moment with it, and then Ian McKellen flies up the stairs. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's like that in microcosm. Because it's a much smaller thing coming after them. It wouldn't.
Well, then I like that they have to defuse the bomb in the elevator shaft. Like, it adds an extra layer of tension.
Oh, that's a good call. Yeah. I also love the nonsensical bit of he tries to defuse it, and then it starts counting down real fast, and then he's able to stop it at 2 minutes, but then it keeps counting down. Okay. HB Haga says nuclear pinball. Why didn't I think of that? It is like real life pinball, and this got a pinball machine, a pretty good one that I've played, and that's my favorite shot in the movie.
Oh, the face in the mirror?
So cool!
Yeah, it's really cool.
Should have been the box. See, look. It's like the end of Spawn, where it's like they probably had a different ending, and they just had to figure something out.
He's having a seizure.
Yeah! What is he doing?
He's feeling with his mind.
Oh,
Reach
okay.
out with your mind.
You need more setup for this. I don't know. It really feels like your standard, well, the movie's gotta end.
Yeah, I don't know. It didn't bother me the first viewing because it's like they're using powers throughout the whole movie, and he controls the knife. So I just went. It felt like a natural continuation of all that.
See, this is the mistake that I make sometimes when I go ahead and give it a second watch. Because I was fine with it yesterday. And then I watched it today and I went, wait a minute, what is happening here? I'm not quite in a place where I want to drink like this guy, but...
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not entirely sure. Having only seen it once and now a second time, but it doesn't really bother me offhand.
But I'm just saying, nobody uses telekinesis through the whole movie. Like, if he could, like he clearly develops it by the end.
Well, like I said, I think,
and I guess that's
when I watched it the first time, I assumed that's how they controlled the knife, was telepathically. So
no, like you don't control objects telepathically.
Hmm.
You read people's minds telepathically. You control objects telekinetically. It's a different power.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? And so
Yeah.
he couldn't do that the whole movie. If he could, he wouldn't have to cloud men's minds. So if now he's way more powerful by the end if he can do that, first of all. That means you're going to have a Magneto plus Xavier in your second movie if you get another movie. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, he's not so powerful in the second movie. Actually, even beyond Magneto, he's the Phoenix.
When I think I just always assume telepaths and telekinesis kind of go hand in hand too.
They don't, though.
But
that's why Jean Grey is significantly more powerful than Professor X, because she's got both.
But I always assume Professor X has telekinesis.
He does not.
Because I haven't read like any X-Men, so I always assume he's both.
But don't you remember, even in the movies, like, when he gets a whole room of people to freeze in their tracks, he's not controlling their bodies, he's controlling their minds.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different power. So, like, I'm not saying that it's confusing in that, like he doesn't clearly develop it by the end. He does. I don't totally understand what leads into that, and if it's emotional in any way. That's the first thing. The second thing is, it does feel really rushed. Just the timing
that's
of
fair.
it. And then the third thing is, do you really want a telekinetic shadow past this? They're not thinking ahead is the point I'm making. The shadow was way less interesting if he's telekinetic.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's true.
And that's the same thing Spawn will do with their logo.
I don't even remember that.
Where the face disappears to the eyes.
Yeah. That is one of those movies where I remember certain scenes and that's about it. And I've seen it like a ton of times growing up, but
or at least I think it does it on screen, but it has a.
I know that's like the cover is the face shot.
Yeah, it has a logo where they'll use the eyes and they'll use the whole face. But anyway,
that is correct.
I mean, it's a really fun movie.
Yeah,
I like it a lot. I just think that ending is pretty sloppy.
Mm-hmm. No, and you're not wrong. I know it doesn't bother me a ton, but it's definitely sloppy.
And there were very few 90s superhero movies or action movies that had good songs over the credits.
Yes. No, every single Batman movie has like a really weird choice for its soundtrack. And Spider-Man's got that, and like I guess all those 2000s Marvels do.
Well, there's weird choices and then there's bad choices. You know what I mean? Like, this song is like nothing, and the song at the end of Mask of the Phantasm is not a good song. You know, there's some kind of just not good songs, and there's things like "Kiss from a Rose" is a good song. Why is it in Batman?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. That's the distinction I'm making. You know?
Yeah. No,
like, I love "End is the Beginning is the End," but
I mean, "Kiss from
why
a
is it in
Rose"
Batman and Robin?
Is Batman Forever. That is my go-to.
No, Batman and Robin.
No, it's Batman Forever because it's a Smashing Pumpkins song in Batman and Robin.
So, I don't know if you've heard what I said. I said "End is the Beginning is the End," which is a Smashing Pumpkins song.
I thought you were talking about "Kiss from a Rose."
Yeah, I started there, and then I said "The end is the beginning is the end."
I didn't hear that.
I was making a second example.
I didn't hear that.
Pay attention.
I also don't know the name of that song, but
well, that's it. And so anyway. And I always forget which is which, but the fast version is Batman and Robin, and then the slower version is the Watchmen trailer. And one is called "The End is the Beginning is the End," and the other one is called "The Beginning is the End is the Beginning." They flipped it for the slower version.
And I've gone cross-eyed. Yeah, "Kiss from a Rose" is like my go-to example of like, why is this the song at the end?
It's so weird.
Yeah, no, it's such a bad choice.
Speaking of Batman Forever, though, This is gonna be a weird comment, but
Yeah.
I did have this thought watching this a second time today that in some ways the way Margot is handled in this movie is almost like what they thought they were doing with Chase Meridian.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because she's actually like intrinsic to the plot, and you sort of buy her being with the hero, and like they both find out that I mean, it's way later with Chase Meridian. Well, I guess Vicky Vale does too. I guess most of those love interests in Batman find out that he's Batman.
It's just not Julie Madison and Batman and Robin.
No, because she's in one
like,
scene.
two
And then we forget about her. And then Batman just wants Poison Ivy the whole movie.
Yeah. No, Chase Meridian's entire character is just that she's horny. And the character here gets horny, but that's not her entire character.
She is too!
But not the entire time. She has other emotions outside of I want to bone you, Batman.
Oh, I didn't bring up that criticism that you and I talked about off camera a little bit, but there's also the thing with his uncle, who's also a pulp character, apparently. And you'd think he'd be a little bit more involved in the story. Like, he seems like he's supposed to be the Commissioner Gordon, but they can't think of anything for him to do, so he just kind of shows up at the end.
Like Commissioner Gordon at this point.
Well, yeah, but Commissioner Gordon gets more screen time than he does actually doing police work. Like, he just sits in a nightclub all the time.
Yeah.
At least Gordon is being is being the police chief. Like, this guy's just kind of there for right at the end. That's it.
Yeah.
Even Chief Stearns gets more to do than he does in Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's the weird bit where he says that Margot is odd and he doesn't want to be anywhere around her because she hears voices. And then the very next scene, she's talking to Cranston, and they realize that they can kind of read each other's minds, or that she can read his mind. And she's like, "Oh, that hasn't happened since I was a kid." And I'm like, "That hasn't happened since you were a kid? Then why are people worried about you hearing voices?"
My assumption is she said things when she was a kid about it, and that word got around, and she just never shook that.
And everybody still remembers that from when you were a kid? I don't know. That's a stretch to me.
I don't know. There's tons of stuff that people have where you label them as something as a kid, and people still bring it up when they're adults.
If it's that from that long ago, though, I feel like that would come up in the conversation.
But if it's as weird as, oh, like she reads people's thoughts, but the thing too, though, Cap, is it's not necessarily that they know she hasn't done it since she's a kid. It's just that she was doing it as a kid, and everyone was like, "That's weird." She talks about how she can read people's minds. So even if she doesn't bring it up as an adult, like, that would still be in your mind where you're like, that person's weird. They talk about reading your mind.
But it wouldn't have even occurred to me that he would know her that long. Like, the way the scene plays, it's like he's just, I don't know. I'm looking at the scene differently than you, because it watched to me like he just recently learned about her or something. He's like, that girl. Why are you interested in that girl?
That could
like,
still be the same thing, though, because if she like started going to the club and other people know about her, they could also still say that to him. Like, he doesn't necessarily have to know her since she was a child.
It's one of those writing things, though, Austin, where it strikes me as a screenwriter forgetting what he wrote.
Mm-hmm. No, that is possible, but like,
and I think you're being kind of charitable to it, but
I mean, possibly, but like, I don't know. I look at it and I go, okay, that probably is what it is, but like, I can see an explanation just thinking about it for a second.
But it's not in the movie.
No, it's not. But I also don't need them to stop and like explain it entirely. Like, I don't know. I think it's fine.
But yeah, I mean, it's not a big deal. It's a minor thing, but.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just surprised that your mind went to, oh, yeah, when she was a kid. That's such a weird thing, like...
Well, because I mean, I can still see that as being a thing. Like, I don't think those are mutually exclusive. Was more so my thought process.
But, like, it's a big city. Why would they have ever met? Like, why would they know each other?
But they're also, like... elite people in the club, so like it would be a smaller group of people.
I
So like
guess.
word would spread around easier.
Yeah. But then why has Cranston never seen her before?
That I don't know. That's just because it's a movie and he has to be introduced to his
Yeah.
love
Well,
interest.
but the fact that they're meeting for the first time is why my mind didn't go to he's known about her.
Hmm.
You see what I'm saying?
Well, I just assumed she had a reputation like in the club, like people
Have
know
one
about
other
her.
person talk about it. Nobody else talks about it. She doesn't she doesn't have a reputation. That guy thinks she's weird. That's all we get.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's
That's
just an issue.
all
We
we
don't
get.
talk to anyone else in the club. Yeah.
Yeah. So that seemed like a weird kind of little sloppy writing thing to me. And again, I didn't pick up on it until the second viewing
Hmm.
because I knew where it went, and then I went back and watched it again, and I was like, well, wait a minute, she's gonna say this hasn't happened since I was a kid.
Yeah.
And if she had that reputation, you'd think that she would have a harder time, like, having friends and getting along with people. She seems very confident and sure of herself.
Yeah, but I mean, it's also like we don't see her personal life, so it's not like we're seeing her interacting with people a lot. Outside of just in passing.
Yeah. But if she had a reputation and was having difficulty, like, making friends or even, like, dating people and stuff, then she wouldn't deal with Tim Curry the way she does in the hallway.
Hmm. Well, it could also just be like not necessarily like a reputation of, this person's like, awful or like, terrible or something, but it could just be like word gets spread around and then, you're either going to go, yeah, whatever, or you're going to be like, this person's weird. It's like there's also different ways you can react to that.
Yeah. Well, anyway, let's go ahead and go to tweet length reviews, and then we'll go ahead and rate ourselves. I just got to pull this up real quick. Okay, we've got one from a new patron. Thanks, man. Tom Hibbert, who says the movie feels like it came from the early 30s and 40s, where it has a very simple plot and that bit of a noir / campy feel, especially the villains and with the Shadow's powers, because I don't recall him ever having powers. Well, he sort of does in the radio show. An okay film, just not something I go back to. And then going over to Discord. Okay, my Discord is Austin is doing that stupid thing where it's showing people's names with a single letter.
Oh,
So I don't know who this is.
here I can go.
It just says M. I don't know why it does this to me.
Oh, it's probably Matt Bat.
It probably is. I'll go ahead and read it, and then if you're able to find the
Yeah.
person's name, go ahead and read it to me. Thanks, man. He says, one of the most underrated comic book films out there. Love the film's pulpy aesthetic and dry sense of humor. The cast is also fantastic. Rating superhero.
Yeah, it's Matt Bat.
It is Mad Bad. Okay, thanks, man. And then Tom says a cult classic set in a noir style and what I'd like for a gray ghost movie. It's interesting he says that because it turns out that, and I didn't know this until I was doing some research today, that the gray ghost is actually one of the Shadow's villains. It's like a one shot, was in one pulp novel or something.
Yeah. Well, and the Gray Ghost is like very clearly modeled after the Shadow.
Yeah. But I wonder if they knew that he was a Shadow villain, or if they came up with that name independently, and then because he was in
Yeah.
one thing. I wonder if they didn't even know.
Yeah, I mean that's possible.
So that's interesting.
Yeah. No, the internet wasn't wildly accessible or around. I don't know.
Yeah, you couldn't just look that up.
Yeah, exactly.
So what we're learning, Austin said this to me off camera, and I thought it was funny, is that everything rips off Batman. I mean, everything the Shadow. Everything rips off the Shadow. Well, and
See,
actually,
what happened was is that some person had to use the computer to look up to see if the Gray Ghost was a name somewhere, and somebody else was on the phone, so they couldn't do it. They're like, cursed 90s internet.
that was a conversation that we didn't really finish earlier, which is the whole question about why this movie didn't really perform. And I think it's a wrong place, wrong time kind of thing. Well, I think it's two things. I think it's wrong place, wrong time in that, and this is where I was talking about the whole dog chasing its tail thing, where, I started the sentence like a million years ago. The Shadow begets Batman, then Batman begets the Shadow. So it ends up looking to the audience that it's most aimed at like a Batman ripoff.
Yeah.
Even though you can't have Batman without the Shadow, but it also is borrowing enough from the look of 89, and it's being merchandised in a similar way, it's being sold to kids in a similar way, that kids are probably looking at this movie going, well, I mean, I've already got Batman. Like, why do I care about that?
Yeah, I'm sure as a kid, you're probably thinking Batman's more interesting because he has like a more grander design.
Yeah, and he's modern. And I mean, it's interesting because Batman doesn't come too far after the Shadow in real life, but the difference is the Shadow stays a period piece in the 30s, typically. There are modern Shadow stories, but it doesn't happen very often, and fans don't typically love that choice. And Batman continued moving forward.
Character to move forward to modern day, especially with like cell phones and stuff. Because you don't want to see a Shadow story where he's like texting his agents.
No, no, exactly. That's so fun. Anybody can be the Shadow now.
Yeah, exactly. He's calling the cab. He's texting him, being like, "Meet me out front. Where are you at?"
Yeah. So you look at the pulp hero movies that performed and the ones that didn't, and there's few enough of them that it's difficult to establish a pattern. But if there is any, it's the audience that it's aimed at. Dick Tracy was not, I mean, it had merchandise, it had a video game and stuff, but it was sold as hard to adults as it was to kids. And it had Madonna. I mean, there was a lot going for it for an adult crowd that didn't necessarily have kids or would bring kids to that movie.
Well, and we're in the heart of the cop action movie, too. So I'm sure like it was easier to sell Dick Tracy.
Oh, I see. Yeah, but it's a period piece. Here's the point I'm trying to make.
Well, what I mean is, like, in that period where we're getting, like, Die Hard and stuff, like, all these movies about cop action heroes, like, it was probably an easier sell.
But again, it's a pulp period thing. It looks different. I don't know that the fact that it's a cop, it's not even a cop. I mean, Dick Tracy's not a cop.
Oh, isn't he like a detective though? Like it's like
he's a
that
private detective, but it's but it's noir. But yeah, it's not anywhere near that genre. I mean, it's like a neo noir thing. And the point I'm trying to make is this movie should have sold if Dick Tracy did, and I think it's because it looks more like Batman and it's aimed more at kids. Is the point I'm trying to make. You get to the Phantom. It looks more like Kitty Fair, even though it wasn't really, and adults didn't really go to it, so it didn't perform very well. But then Zorro, not sold to kids at all.
Oh no!
So I think that was much more of a, I would say almost even like a date night kind of movie. Weirdly, like it's an action thing, and probably some kids liked it, but it felt very much more like it was for adults. So I think if there's a pattern at all, I think it's that.
Well, and I'm trying to think. Yeah, because that's later '90s, so it would have been after GoldenEye too. So I'm sure they probably would have leaned into from the guy who made GoldenEye.
Oh marketing. Yeah, I always forget about that.
Yeah, because he makes GoldenEye, Casino Royale, and Zorro, and then like a decade later he makes Green Lantern, and he's never done it like anything awesome again.
Isn't that sad?
Because it like killed his career. Yeah,
that's really sad. Did you have any? Maybe this is a weird question, but I had this a little bit while I was watching. Just thinking about you. Did you have any Gore Verbinski vibes at all with this movie?
I was never thinking of that, but like this is just in that period where we're doing like really dark stuff, even in movies aimed at kids. So like that element is just kind of baked into this period. So I'm not thinking about him specifically.
Yeah, and like the action obviously isn't as elaborate as what he shoots, but there's bits of it.
Well, and
that remind me a little bit of that. Just it gets silly enough.
Yeah, no, that is true. But I guess there's elements of this in his Lone Ranger, just from us talking about it.
And then like the mask was sold to kids and adults alike, and of course that was a huge, massive hit. But part of that was Jim Carrey, and it's also like it's pulpish in its way, but it's not based on a pulp character.
Yeah, and it's got more of like the cartoon aesthetic too, compared to the pulp aspect.
Yeah, like I think that's a movie that you go to and are surprised it fits in a superhero formula before you go to it because it looks like a superhero movie.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least that's
you probably just go to it because it's like a fun comedy.
yeah. I mean that's what I had when I was a kid. Like I went and saw it, I was like, oh, I didn't expect this to be a superhero thing, but like it is.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm sure because I haven't seen the trailers or like it's been a long time, but I'm sure they didn't sell it as like, look, and here's the villains, and like he's got to fight the bad guys.
No.
It was probably just sold on here's the mask doing shtick.
Well, yeah, I think Dorian might have a shot or two in the trailer, but you're right. Like I don't think you're really. They sold it more on the dog actually than the bad guy.
They're shooting the bad guy mask.
Austin, how do you rate The Shadow?
I've been like going back and forth all day.
Yeah, I have too.
Because it's either a high one or it's a low another one, and I'm lost on which one I should give it to. Because I also feel like I had a better watch a second time, even though there are things that don't make a ton of sense. But like, there's also movies I like in the genre that have that too, and I am going to give it a superhero, I think.
Okay, cool. That's higher than I thought you'd go.
It's a low superhero or a high hero. I was like,
that's where I'm at with it.
It was at a hero like all day, and then I think I had a better second viewing, so it bumped it up. But it could easily flip back and forth.
Yeah, I had enough criticism in the way it's plotted and stuff that I feel like I'm gonna have to do the thing you almost did and go the high hero. Mm-hmm. Like, and I mean, we're not doing like midpoints or anything, so it's a hero, but it's almost a super. Like, it's really close.
Mm-hmm. It's right in that line.
What's weird about it is I really enjoy it while I'm watching it, but there's never a fiber of my being that feels like putting it in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair.
Now, some of that's just taste, of course. But like, I think the dialogue writing is better than the actual plotting of it.
Yeah.
But then I also, praised it for being pretty tight with some things. Like, there's some really good setup and payoff with gags, and stuff like that. But I think the choice for how the origin is handled hurts it a little bit. And then I think probably the main thing that makes me go down a little bit with it is I hadn't had the thought until we were talking about it, watching it, that, oh God, this was supposed to be a franchise and you have a telekinetic shadow.
Yeah.
That really messes with it, with the ending to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess I'm just not thinking about it like that way. I don't know. That, and I don't know anything about the shadow, so it's...
Sure.
That's not jumping out at me, but I definitely want to jump into some shadow stuff after this.
Yeah, and you may have different feelings about some of it if that material resonates with you. Like,
yeah, no, I could come back to this and be like,
like you don't seem to at the moment really have an opinion one way or another about how the origin's handled.
Yeah, because I have nothing to compare it to, so it's just like, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, besides the shadow, the main thing to compare it to is Batman with Begins. That it's like if he did go ahead and kill Joe Chill, mm-hmm. and then still became Batman.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's a weird mix between Begins and Doctor Strange with his origin.
Oh, that scene with the flashback, or when like she sees flashes of him as the despot.
Mm-hmm.
Why does he have blood on his mouth? Is he like...
he was eating somebody. He should have turned around and been like, "Hello, Margot. I am the Shadow. You'll go where I go. Defile who I defile, and eat who I eat."
You gotta wonder what things a man can actually come back from. Like, did he eat people, or did he just happen to stab somebody and they bled right in his face? What actually happened there?
A little bit of both.
Everybody, thanks so much for joining us. I want to say thanks to our patrons as always. If you'd like to become a Patreon producer, you can go to patreon.com/geekvolution. The $10 tier gets you access to several perks, including my reading your name very dramatically at the end of every episode of the Superhero Rewind commentary project. And you can join us in our Discord. You can hang out with us periodically there, and we also do polls to occasionally to select things for the show. The next couple of shows we've got kind of figured out, kind of baked in. We'll reveal it in a little bit. We're gonna do something next time because of anniversaries of things for this year, and then we're gonna do another request after that. Probably probably Ultimate Avengers, because we almost did that and we should probably get that knocked out. So those will be the next couple, and we'll reveal that here in just a second. But let me... Sorry, I gotta find my thing here. Okay. No, we'll go ahead and reveal that right now, and then I'll read the names. Austin, what are we doing next time?
Should I say one and you say another one?
Yeah, sure. Why not? We're doing a double feature.
So we are going to do X2.
Followed immediately by the Daredevil Director's Cut.
Yep.
It'll be a long night. That'll be 4.5 or 5 hours, probably.
Yep.
Because I think X2 is even on the longer side, is it not? Isn't it like 210, 215?
Yeah, I feel like it's around there. And we'll blind ourselves for X2, and we'll play chess virtually for Daredevil.
That's hilarious. We are not going to blind ourselves. Like, oh man, I was so close. 2 hours and 14 minutes.
1 minute off.
Look at that. Well, to be fair, if I knew that by the minute, you'd be like, I mean, I know you like that movie, but it's kind of weird.
Yeah, it'd be like, that's lame.
You know exactly how long that is.
That's the worst power of all time. You just name a movie and you're like, this is how long it is by the minute.
So it's the 20th anniversary of both of those movies, and I think we should do them definitely in that order, because I think Daredevil comes after X2. No.
I didn't even realize it was for that. I assumed it was because
flipped?
it's the 60th anniversary of X-Men this month. I think it's this month.
It is, but the main reason is because they both came out in 2003.
Oh, okay. Man, I'm getting old.
So yeah, we're gonna do that as a double feature. We thought that would be really fun. So join us for that, won't you? And yeah, we're doing the director's cut because the theatrical version is so gutted that we'll just talk about all the story that isn't in it. And I've done a commentary on that before, and that was the difficulty with it, was how do you talk about this without talking about the other cut? So
yeah, I've listened to the director's cut once, so I'm interested to go back to that.
Oh, cool. Do you remember liking it?
Yeah. I mean, I liked the theatrical cut, so like all growing up. So I'm pretty sure it was just like, oh yeah, this is like a better version of this.
The last time I saw it, I remember not appreciating it as much just because the TV show had just happened and I was still on a high from that. And it made it
certainly
really difficult to appreciate it. And I feel like I've got enough distance from that, I might be able to separate them a little bit more easily.
I mean, it's a good movie, but the show is like a billion times better.
Yeah, well, I mean, I still say the show is probably the best adaptation of comics material we've ever had. The first season, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least it's way up there.
Yep.
So, as much as I like the 2003 movie, it ain't that.
No.
You're not gonna get that from Mark Steven Johnson.
Maybe the Born Again show will be worse, and we'll all look back and be like, the 2003 movie's at least better than that. We'll see.
Thanks once again to our patrons and especially our producers, and I'd like to thank them by name right now, including one reply: Bill Mills, Chewbacca's lover, Dr. Hello, Elliot Slater, Goofster123, Hayden Spring, Joe Turner. You know what? Next time I should have Austin do this.
What, just all of them? Yeah, I can do that.
Or we could go back and forth.
Yeah.
And we do it now, except I don't have a way for you to look at the list because
Yeah, I just have to guess.
you don't have access to my Patreon. So, well, you know what? Actually, I'm gonna be obnoxious here. Here. I'm gonna share this list with you. See, I can share it and you can see it. See, okay. Can you see that?
Okay, hold on. I gotta zoom in because they're so far away.
Oh
Okay.
goodness. Okay, can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, so I said Joe Turner, and then you say the next one.
Jojira.
Matt Bat 68.
Michael Martin.
Stone Gasman.
The Amalgamation.
Thomas Edgehill.
Tom Ebert.
Adam March.
Damon Begay.
Hot Soup.
Jacob Schneider.
Jonathan Campbell.
Justin Hayes.
Kareem Roberts.
Matthew Brody.
Michael Austin Gulick.
Miguel Rodriguez. Right.
Oh,
Miguel
look,
Rodriguez.
it's you and you're reading them. The Day Ghost. You almost had to read your own name.
Some passenger. I don't know. He's unknown.
And Wendell Jones. Do you know what this means?
What's that?
Well, this means that the guy that used to always be at the end
No, he's gone.
has dropped his pledge. Maybe he got tired of being at the end all the time. And so he just decided, I'm not even going to be a patron. Screw it. Oh, was it Zach?
Yeah,
It was Zach. We don't have Zach anymore.
Everyone put F in the chat for Zach. I'm sad he's gone.
All right. Well, that was a really good time. We appreciate you. Sorry we argued for like 7 minutes about how that one line or that one thing with the uncle went with Margot. But we will see you again in a couple weeks with another one, and it'll be a lengthy double feature. I'm looking forward to it.
Yep, it'll be great.
I was Captain Logan, and this was Austin, the Day Ghost.
Bye, as X2 famously said.
Oh no. That's the big thing you remember from that movie.
That's the best part. Yeah, it's the best scene.
All right. We'll see you later, folks. Bye, everybody.
See ya.